Hello, everyone, and welcome to Untamed Academy, where trainers and owners meet to discover how to improve their communication, sharpen their skills, and master the craft. And class is in session. My name is Mariano Alvarez. I'm a dog trainer, business owner of Untamed Dog Co, and co-host of the Dog Trainers podcast. And this is going to be the first episode of our 3-part deep dive into teaching like a pro. In our last episode, we laid out the big picture. Now we're going to be breaking it down step by step. And today we're focusing on step 1, how to plan like a pro. Because a great training program, a great training lesson doesn't start when the leash goes on the dog. It starts with a clear, well-structured plan. I'll walk you through how to set goals and then break them down into manageable steps and then communicate them effectively with owners. If you want to make your training session smoother, more productive, and easier for clients to follow and stick to with homework, this is where it all begins. Let's get into it. Now, my first tip on how to plan like a pro is to set clear goals. Think about the end result before you even start. What should the dog and the owner be able to do after this lesson is over? Or what is it that the dog needs to be able to not do, or the owner be able to not do, in order to find success by the end of this lesson? And be specific. Instead of just saying, I want to stop my dog jumping on the counter, maybe something along the lines of, I want to be able to keep my dog out of the kitchen while we're cooking Thanksgiving dinner this Thursday without having to constantly look over my shoulder or without having to toss my dog in the crate for the 5 hours that my family is going to be there. And once you've kind of made a nice specific goal, something real, something tangible, then you break it down into steps. What are the small mini versions that are going to ABC walk their way over to the end result? My dog is able to stay out of the kitchen with all these people here and all this food all over the place. And once you have all that stuff squared away, now you have a more clear goal, a more clear idea of a goal. So let me give you a simple example of what this could look like. I'm going to use that same example of jumping on the counters. If I want my dog to be able to stop jumping on the counters, before I start teaching random things, before I just kind of lean on a program because it's just kind of my program, like lots of trainers have their program. I typically start dogs with this and then that and then this. Instead of doing that, I'm going to start asking myself and asking the owner and planning this out before we get started. What is it that we actually need? If a dog is jumping on the counters, I don't necessarily need to start with leash manners at the door. I don't necessarily need to start with crate manners and teaching them to be quiet in the crate unless that's going to be part of how you keep them off the counters. And I don't necessarily need to start with sits and downs and all that good stuff, right? Now, don't get me wrong, everybody. Obviously, there's value to teaching all those different things for lots of different reasons. I look at it like a workout program. There's benefit to all these different workouts. There's reasons all these different types of equipment exist. It's not that it's bad, and it's not that you're wrong for using it if it makes sense to your goal, but my goal might be different than your goal. So for my goal, if the dog is jumping on the counter and that is the single biggest issue, then I'm going to start with teaching the dog to get off of the counter. And I'm probably going to start also with teaching the dog to just stay out of the kitchen. That's what I mean by setting a clear goal of what you're going to work on before you even get started, because it'll avoid you kind of walking around obscurely finding the target eventually. I don't want to start with sit and down and this and that, and then way later realize, oh, the out was really what they needed. Now, my second tip on how to plan like a pro is once you've set those clear goals, now you have a plan of attack for this lesson or for these next few lessons, whatever the time frame is. Once you have that plan, share that plan with the owners. Owners do so much better, you guys, when they have a roadmap. So make sure they know what to expect for the session. Now, of course, there is a sort of a middle ground here. Tons of dog trainers go too far too fast, and then owners are thinking of step 4 when they should be thinking of step 1. So in my opinion, the way to do this thoughtfully without overdoing it looks like this. While you're working on step 1, I'm going to have you start to think about step 2. And don't worry, I'll give you an example at the end of this, okay? But start planning ahead. Just don't let owners go too far ahead. An easy way to avoid that, emphasize. I know this is coming next. I'll explain in my explanation in a second why this can be helpful in the real world, but I know that I'm telling you this is coming next. However, where I want your attention to be, where I want your focus to be, is not in what's coming next, it's in what you're doing right now. Now, my next tip is going to be to use the Michael Ellis approach. I think that Michael Ellis is the greatest teacher in all of dog training in the world right now. And what he says is tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then at the end of the lesson, tell them what you told them. And honestly, guys, I look up to Mike so much. That phrase there, that quote, is essentially the outline for Teach Like a Pro, my 3-step guide. Mike really is that guy. And if you guys like super high level teaching, look up Michael Ellis. You will not be disappointed. And my final tip on this is to give them something visual. Sometimes a little training outline that's printed, sometimes a sort of a visual aid like we've all seen the contingency square or like a Venn diagram. There's so many opportunities to lean on visuals so that you don't have to talk too long. And then there's an added benefit. If you give them a visual, like an email or a printed out, something, they can always review it a bit later on their own time, like when a student gets a syllabus for a class, which means I'll hand you this and we'll review it super quick, but then I want to get started because if you want all the gritty details, read it later, right? Now, I was saying a second ago that I was going to give you guys a real world example of focusing on what you're doing right now, but just starting to plan ahead a little bit and why that's valuable. So here's my example. If I were going to teach an owner how to get a dog off of a counter or get a dog off of a sofa, and I was going to do it with food, and let's say you have the dog on the counter, paws up on the counter, and I walk up to the dog's face, which is really high up because it's standing, essentially, right? And I take a treat to the dog's mouth. The dog now sees I have it, and I go off, and then I take my hand to the ground, and the dog follows my hand to the ground. And I say, good, and then give them the treat. Teaching the owner what to focus on would be get dogs' attention, and then lure them down. Get dogs' attention, then lure them down, and do it again, and again, and again, and again. The step that comes after that I want them to start planning for is when the dog gets down, be ready to say the word good and open your hand so that the dog can get the treat. Because we've all seen it where the owner's so focused on doing a good job with the lure that they forget to go, oh, sorry, here, and they don't give the treat. That's what I mean by focus on what you're doing right now. The big piece of this right now is get the dog off the counter. But plan ahead just enough that when it comes time to open your hand to give the dog the food, the owner's not completely caught off guard, like, oh, give it to them now? Make sure that they understand just enough to kind of keep it in the back of their mind, but focus on what they're doing right now with a little bit of a tint on what's coming next. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, my third tip for planning like a pro. So now we've talked about setting clear goals, and now we've talked about once you have goals, you've shared those goals with the owner. So the third tip for planning like a pro is to establish a nice teaching workflow. And here's what I mean by that. A strong workflow could be something like explain what you're going to do, and then you demonstrate it, and then have them demonstrate it back to you, aka have them practice. And then at the very end, make time for questions. That's a simple workflow that not only can help a lesson individually, but if you really want to improve and upgrade your ability to teach, I would recommend, it doesn't have to be that exact workflow, but I would recommend that you make a workflow and then you stick to it. And then you make that clear. We were talking about explaining the plan to the owners. I like to make my workflow clear to the owners because now they know if I have questions during any of this, he already told me we're going to have time at the end for questions. And I can take that even further and say, if you guys like this workflow today, we're going to stick with this exact same workflow for every single lesson. Now they instantly know lesson 1, 5, 6 are all going to look like this. He's going to explain it, and then he's going to show me, and then I'm going to show him, and then he's going to let me ask questions. Establish a nice workflow. Balance structure and adaptability, because of course plans change, right? That's my next big step, is be willing and be comfortable not only adapting your plan. It should hopefully be a little more rare to have to adapt a plan when you take a lot of time to plan things out properly. But nonetheless, you guys, this is the real world, and every dog and every owner is unique, and you're going to have to adapt and evolve a plan. That's fine. I want you not only to be aware of that. What I really want you to do is practice making the owners comfortable with that. Why do I say that? Because owners will see that your plan is not working for whatever reason, right? Things happen. And then they stress out. Oh my God, is my dog trainable? Is this probably the worst dog you've ever seen? I know that my dog's like really stubborn. I heard that Frenchies are like really stubborn. And owners freak out. So you have to be able to explain to them, no, you guys, stop stressing on me right now. Plans change. It is okay. Don't freak out. This doesn't mean that your dog is terrible. This doesn't mean that this isn't going to work. Plans change. It's okay. Just make sure that you make that clear to them in a way that conveys confidence. Even though this plan is evolving, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen the way that you want them to happen. Just trust in the process. Keep doing your homework. Keep paying attention. Don't let the stress get the best of you. So those are my 3 steps on how to plan like a pro. Okay, we're talking setting clear goals, and then share the goals with the owners, and then establish a nice clear workflow and make sure that you share the workflow with owners. Now, I want to try something new, and if you guys like this, please do let me know, because if you do, I'm going to stick with this for the remaining episodes in this 3-part series, and maybe I'll stick with it for the rest of the episodes if you like it that much. I wanted to finish this with a trainer's toolbox. This is going to be sort of a bibliography type thing. This is where I've found certain books or certain resources that have been really helpful to me, and I want to share them with you, okay? And I'm putting it at the end here so that you don't have to try to go scroll back through the episode to remember this stuff, and I'll also put this stuff in the description of each episode so that you can just find it and copy it if you want to look these things up for yourself. So, someone that I really want to highlight, she's written tons of books, so it's hard to say which one, but I would just look up Dr. Ali Atkison. That's Atkison. Dr. Ali Atkison. She's the president and head of ROI Training Solutions. Basically what they are, they're a company that is hired by other companies. And then that company that hired them sends them training materials. I want you to teach my HR staff, this, and that. And what they do with that information that they sent them is they turn it into very teachable, digestible information. They're professional teachers. They teach for a living. And she's since written books on how to communicate better, in context broader than just teaching. She's somebody who I look up to a ton. I actually quote her quite a bit, and I would strongly encourage you to look her up, Dr. Ali Atkison. Now, the second book I'm going to recommend is The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. I hope I'm saying that right, Coyle. I'm sure a lot of you guys know The Talent Code. It was a really popular book, I know that, but it's a great book on how people learn best. And something else I'm going to recommend, it's not a book, it's in terms of using visual aids. Don't be afraid to make your training room feel a little bit like a classroom. Get a chalkboard or a whiteboard, something that will allow you to write things down for people. We have in our training room a chalkboard and a whiteboard and mirrors that I write on with my markers, because it allows me tons of opportunities to put notes for people essentially so that they're not so stressed out to remember in the moment, right? Say sit, then pick up your hand, and then say good, and then give the treat. I'll just literally write the steps, boom, 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 right there in the mirror. That way when they're looking at themselves doing it, they also see the words at the exact same time. Don't be afraid to use things that help you write notes for people, especially when it comes to things like evaluations and consultations, because everybody kind of has their training model. You can draft it out for people. They can see it, and sometimes when they see it, it's different than just hearing it. So that would be my second tip for you. And then my third tip for you, goal setting. This is one I heard from my friend Clark Kegley. He's got a YouTube channel. He's a really sharp guy. He had a program that he was running for a while called Metamorphic. I think it's closed now, but it was incredible. And most of that information that I saw on Metamorphic, I see on his YouTube channel. I couldn't recommend enough that you guys check this out. So the tip that I'm talking about, to get back to it, it's a type of worksheet that I'm sure you can Google, and it's called the Goal Setting Worksheet. And maybe there's a few different ways to do this, but the one that I saw, the one that I did as part of the program, imagine like a dartboard. There's a huge circle and then a bunch of smaller circles until you eventually get to the bullseye. And here's how this looks. It's kind of a mind map. You draw a huge circle, and on that circle somewhere, you write the word someday. And then you draw a smaller circle that's still big, but it's smaller than the biggest circle. And then on that circle, you write something like 2 years. And then a smaller circle, you write 1 year, smaller circle 6 months, smaller circle 2 months, etc., right? Until you get down to like 1 week, maybe even 1 day. And here's the point of this worksheet. This worksheet comes in conjunction with a series of honest questions that you have to learn how to ask yourself. So they go like this. Someday, if money wasn't a factor, if nothing was a factor, if this was just a movie and I had the best outcome I could possibly have, and I was the dog trainer that I really want to be someday, who is that person? Explain this person. What do they look like? What is their teaching ability? What is their financial situation? XYZ, right? So I'd be like, I want to teach like Michael Ellison. I want to do this like this person, and I want to do that like that person. And then once you have the someday, and the next circle past that is the 2 year circle, now you've got to ask these questions. Okay, if you want to be this perfect dog trainer and educator in the future, who do you have to be in 2 years' time in order to be on your way to someday? And then I have to go, man, I've got to be like halfway there, or maybe like a quarter of the way there, depending on what my time frame looks like, right? And then 1 year means I've got to be that much closer, and then 1 month means I've got to be that much closer. And the closer you get down to 1 week, 1 day, now the questions start evolving. If you want to look like this in 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, what do you need to start doing today? Obviously, you may not get done today, but what do you need to start doing today to start becoming this person, to start educating in this manner, to start being able to teach with this level of skill? And then the final rung of questions looks like this. Every day or every week, whatever your smallest circle is, you just have to ask yourself very honestly, now that you know what you were supposed to do today, just yes or no, did you do it? Just yes or no. No explanation allowed. And if the answer is no, then you get one more question, but this is a separate question. It doesn't go in the no answer. It's just a no. The second question becomes, okay, why not? Because then the third question is going to be, now that you've written out your reasoning, is your excuse valid? And again, that is a yes or a no. It's an incredible worksheet, you guys. Again, it's called the goal setting worksheet. I'll reach out to my friend Clark and see if he's okay with me posting the one that he sent to us. But if he's not, Google goal setting. It's like this target, bunch of circles closing in on each other. And I'm sure that you can find maybe, goal setting questionnaire or something like that that comes along with the goal setting worksheet. But I found that to be incredibly helpful. If you want to be something someday, start breaking down what that looks like. And that means now you turn a goal into a plan. Hope that makes sense. And that's it, you guys. That's step 1. If you nail the planning, everything else will fall into place. Next episode, we're going to cover how to teach in a way that actually sticks. This concludes our class here at Untamed Academy, and I thank you guys so much for listening. Please, you guys really do let me know. I'd appreciate your feedback so much. Like I've said before, I won't keep saying it. I'm sure this is getting old, but this new idea, this new format, I really would love to know. What do you guys think? Are there things you can improve? Are there things that you would like to hear about? You let me know. Instagram at Untamed Dog Co. And if you found this episode helpful, then please share it with the others who might also find it helpful. My name is Mariano Alvarez. This is Untamed Academy. Class dismissed. Thank you for being with us.